You think blessings arrive with thunder and light, but sometimes they arrive in silence, disguised as loss, delay, or solitude. What if what you call emptiness is actually God clearing space for something extraordinary? There comes a time in every woman's journey when life begins to move beneath the surface, quietly, mysteriously, as though something unseen is shifting the ground she walks upon. At first it feels like chaos. Familiar things begin to fall apart. Relationships lose their rhythm, and the comfort she once drew from the predictable starts to fade into silence. But this is not the end. It is the beginning of a sacred disruption. What seems like collapse is often divine construction. The structures that once kept her safe now confine her. The people who once understood her no longer speak the same emotional language. And so life begins to rearrange itself, not to harm her, but to prepare her. Because before anything beautiful enters, everything false must leave. The most powerful transformations do not announce themselves with noise. They arrive in whispers. They come disguised as endings, rejections, detours. When a woman's soul is ready to rise, heaven begins the clearing. And that clearing doesn't feel divine, it feels devastating. Yet, if she dares to look closer, she will see that what's being taken from her is not punishment, it's protection. It's as though life itself is saying it can't walk into the next season carrying this weight. The things that fall away are simply those not built to follow her into her promise. In these moments, the heart aches for understanding, but understanding rarely comes first. Confusion comes first, emptiness comes next, and then, somewhere in between the breaking and the rebuilding, peace begins to whisper. Not the peace of having everything figured out, but the peace of realizing that she no longer needs to, that perhaps what is happening unto her is in truth happening and for her. The sacred disruption, meant to destroy, it's meant to awaken. When everything feels unstable, she begins to sense that something far greater than logic is guiding her steps. The people who left didn't abandon her. They exited so that her energy could finally return home to herself. The loss she thought would shatter her heart becomes the very opening through which grace enters. And one day, while sitting in the quiet aftermath of all that's fallen away, she begins to see the pattern, how every broken thing led her closer to wholeness, how every unanswered prayer was a redirection towards something pure. It is in this sacred disruption that she meets herself again. Not the version molded by expectations, but the raw, unguarded self she's been hiding beneath her roles, her strength, her constant need to survive. The disruption doesn't only strip away the world around her, it strips away who she pretended to be. And when she no longer recognizes her old life, she finally begins to recognize her soul. In the emptiness that follows, something else begins to awaken. The call towards solitude, not loneliness, but sacred separation. A quiet longing to pull away from the noise, the endless conversations, the surface-level connections. Suddenly, her soul desires stillness. She no longer wants to explain herself or seek validation. Instead, she finds herself drawn to early mornings where light spills through the window, to evenings spent in reflection, to moments that are less about doing and more about being. At first, the silence feels heavy. She's used to being surrounded by people, by movement, by distractions that fill the empty spaces. But now, those distractions no longer work. They can't soothe her anymore, because the soul knows when it's time to listen. And in that listening, everything begins to shift. It is in solitude that she learns the language of her own spirit. The constant noise of the world fades, and what's left is the soft hum of her intuition, something she'd ignored for years while chasing things that never truly belonged to her. Now, she realizes that silence is not empty, it's full of answers, full of presence, full of truth. In this sacred space, she begins to understand why she was pulled away. God hides her for a reason, not to punish her, but to prepare her. The caterpillar must retreat into darkness before it becomes something new. And so must she. Solitude becomes the womb of transformation. It's where she learns to trust herself again, where she remembers the sound of her own heartbeat, where she becomes her own anchor. There, she no longer needs to prove her worth or chase connection. She learns that her value is not in being seen, but in being aligned. She realizes that solitude isn't loneliness, it's intimacy with the divine. It's the moment her outer world grows quiet enough for her inner world to finally speak. And as she grows comfortable in her own stillness, she begins to notice something extraordinary. Her desires change. Her attachments loosen. The people, places, and habits that once held her no longer feel like home. She's shedding, not just possessions or relationships, but entire versions of herself. The one who clung, who feared, who constantly sought approval. She begins to dissolve like smoke in the wind. This shedding can feel like loss, but in truth, it's liberation. Because everything she's losing, she's outgrown. The spiritual weight she carries demands space, and the soul can no longer tolerate what doesn't match its frequency. The conversations that used to entertain her now feel shallow. The relationships built on convenience no longer fit. It's as though her spirit is fasting from everything that isn't authentic. This process is not easy. It hurts to detach from what once defined her. But this detachment is divine. It's the soul's way of cleansing itself. She begins to see that every person who leaves, every habit that breaks, every craving that disappears, is a sign of spiritual detox. The woman she is becoming doesn't need the same validation, the same distractions, the same illusions of control. She's being refined for something greater. The shedding teaches her surrender, not the kind that gives up, but the kind that gives over. It teaches her to stop holding so tightly to what she's afraid to lose, and instead to trust what she cannot yet see. She learns that real blessings don't arrive when she grasps. They arrive when she lets go. And the more she releases, the lighter she feels. Eventually, she understands detachment isn't rejection, it's realignment. The things and people drifting away are not being taken from her. They're being returned to where they belong. And what remains is what's meant to stay. Through it all, she begins to see that her life isn't falling apart. It's falling into place when she looks around and sees fewer people but feels more peace. That's how she knows she's entering the sacred stage of becoming. She realizes that sometimes God subtracts before He multiplies, that isolation often precedes expansion, that loss often opens the door to abundance. The shedding, the silence, the solitude, they were never empty seasons, they were sacred thresholds. And now she stands on the edge of something vast, carrying nothing but truth. The truth that every ending carried grace, the truth that solitude was not punishment, but preparation, the truth that detachment was not loss, but liberation. The woman she is now is not the woman who began this journey. She is lighter, clearer, more anchored in peace. Her spirit has been uncluttered. Her energy, once scattered, has returned home. And in that wholeness, she no longer seeks blessings from the outside. She becomes the blessing itself. For this is the quiet paradox of divine preparation. Before a woman receives what is meant for her, she must first become the vessel capable of holding it. The sacred disruption clears the way, the solitude deepens the roots, the shedding expands her capacity. And then one day, without fanfare or warning, the very thing she was waiting for appears, not as something foreign, but as something familiar. Because by then, she has grown into it. She has become it. And the world finally mirrors back what her soul has known all along, that the blessing was never separate from her. It was within her, waiting for her to remember who she truly is. There comes a moment when the stillness inside begins to tremble, not from fear, but from something far more sacred. A quiet restlessness, soft yet insistent, starts to rise like a tide within the soul. You can feel it in the spaces between your thoughts, in the way your heart beats a little faster when you imagine a life beyond the one you've settled for. It's as if something deep within you is whispering, and you were made for more. This is not dissatisfaction, it's divine stirring. It's the Spirit's way of waking you from comfort that has turned into captivity. The unease that once frightened you now becomes a sacred compass pointing toward expansion. You begin to understand that the life you built for safety was never meant to contain your entire becoming. Comfort is a beautiful place, but nothing grows there. And so when your soul begins to outgrow its current form, it doesn't ask politely to move. It shakes you awake. This shaking can feel disorienting. Suddenly, what used to bring peace now feels dull. The same conversations, the same routines, even the same dreams lose their spark. You try to ignore it, but the whisper keeps returning, gently but persistently reminding you that there's something greater waiting on the other side of your hesitation. You are being stretched, not because you are broken, but because your capacity for purpose is expanding. Many mistake this restlessness for confusion. They try to quiet it with distractions, with busyness, with approval, with plans. But the soul will not be silenced by noise. The more you resist the call, the louder it becomes. What feels like discomfort is the sound of your higher self knocking on the walls of your own limitation. You are being asked to evolve, not into someone new, but into who you truly are beneath the layers of fear. And when you finally stop running, when you sit in the ache of that restlessness long enough to listen, you begin to sense its meaning. This is not life falling apart. This is you falling in line with destiny. You realize that the unease was never punishment, it was preparation. Because before you step into the fullness of what's meant for you, you must first outgrow everything that taught you to play small. But here's the thing about divine preparation. It often feels like repetition. Just when you think you've healed, life brings back the same test. The same argument, the same person, the same temptation wrapped in new packaging. It's easy to think you've gone backward, but this is not regression, it's reflection. Life mirrors your progress by reintroducing what once broke you, not to wound you again, but to show you how much stronger you've become. Every time an old pattern reappears, it asks you one question: will you choose differently? This time you're not being punished, you're being examined. The same scenario returns, not because you failed, but because you're being given a sacred opportunity to rise above the lesson that once controlled you. And as you begin to recognize these patterns, something inside you starts to shift. You no longer react the way you used to. The triggers that once stole your peace lose their power. You see clearly now how life has been teaching you through repetition, shaping your wisdom, one quiet revelation at a time. You realize that the blessing you've been praying for requires emotional maturity to sustain it. You cannot carry divine abundance with old wounds that leak. So life keeps testing, not to shame you, but to make sure your hands are steady enough to hold what you've asked for. Each repeated challenge is an invitation to respond from awareness, not reaction, to pause instead of attack, to understand rather than assume. Every test becomes a chance to practice love where you once practiced fear. And slowly, through grace and persistence, you evolve. The same storm that used to drown you now only reminds you of your ability to float. As this understanding deepens, something else begins to awaken within. A profound quieting of the ego. The part of you that once needed to be right starts to soften. The constant urge to prove your worth begins to fade. You start noticing how little you actually need the world to validate your existence. The louder your spirit grows, the quieter your ego becomes. And in that quiet, peace begins to bloom. This peace is unlike anything you've ever known. It doesn't depend on applause or attention. It lives in your stillness. It breathes in your silence. You begin to recognize that every time you choose peace over pride, you create space for grace to move. You understand that not every battle is meant to be fought. Not every opinion deserves your energy. And not every misunderstanding needs to be corrected. It takes great strength to be silent when your ego is screaming for recognition. But this silence is not weakness, it's wisdom. The woman who once fought to be understood now understands herself so deeply that misunderstanding no longer feels threatening. She realizes that peace is not found in controlling others, but in mastering her own reactions. And as she begins to embody this peace, something miraculous happens. Her energy shifts. She no longer chases, she attracts. She no longer argues, she observes. She no longer forces, she flows. The same situations that once stole her calm now pass by like waves on the shore, unable to disturb the depth of her stillness. In this sacred quiet, she discovers the difference between strength and force. Strength is rooted, grounded, calm. Force is desperate, noisy, and fleeting. True strength doesn't shout, it radiates. And now she radiates. Her presence alone becomes her power. As the ego fades, humility rises. She learns to listen, not just to others, but to life itself. She begins to see how every event, every person, every delay has been a mirror reflecting something she needed to understand about herself. She no longer asks, "Oh, why is this happening to me?" But instead, "What is this revealing in me?" The more she surrenders to this flow, the more she feels aligned with something infinite. She stops trying to control outcomes and starts trusting divine timing. She realizes that what's meant for her cannot be taken, and what leaves her was never truly hers. And in that realization, she finds freedom. Freedom from the need to rush. Freedom from the fear of loss. Freedom from the illusion that she must earn love or prove her worth. She understands now that everything unfolds in perfect rhythm, that blessings come not through striving, but through surrender. This is where transformation becomes visible. Not in grand gestures, but in subtle shifts, in the way she no longer rushes to speak, but listens first. In the way she forgives quietly, even when no apology comes. In the way she honors her peace more than her pride. Through this journey, from restlessness to reflection to release, she has become someone new. Or perhaps she has simply remembered who she was all along. The woman who no longer chases but attracts. The woman who no longer fears endings because she trusts beginnings. The woman who no longer confuses chaos for movement or silence for absence. Now, she walks with a grace that comes from understanding that peace is not something she finds. It's something she chooses. The restlessness was the seed. The repeated lessons were the soil. The quieting of her ego was the rain. And out of that sacred process, she blooms, not loudly, but naturally, in her own divine timing. There is a profound beauty in this becoming, because what she once saw as delay was preparation. What she once called rejection was redirection. And what she once viewed as silence was divine communication in its purest form. Now, she no longer fears the shaking, the waiting, or the quiet. She knows that all of it serves her. Every pause, every test, every moment of surrender. The restlessness awakened her purpose. The repetition refined her strength. The quietness revealed her truth. And so she moves forward, not hurried, not afraid, but deeply rooted in knowing that peace is her birthright, that grace is her rhythm, and that her blessing is not somewhere ahead of her, it's within her, waiting patiently, unfolding gently, arriving precisely when she's ready to hold it. There comes a time, often unnoticed, when the unseen begins to whisper, not in words, but in patterns, in symbols, in moments that seem too precise to be coincidence. You start to notice them, the numbers that repeat, the words that follow you, the dreams that echo a truth. Your mind hasn't yet caught up to, you feel it, that gentle tug that says, I pay attention. Something is aligning, And though you may not fully understand it, your soul does. You start to sense that the invisible world is speaking, not through logic, but through rhythm. Life begins to feel like a conversation between you and the divine. You wake from a dream, and the next day, the same message greets you in a stranger's words. You think of someone, and suddenly they appear. You hesitate on a decision, and a sign, subtle yet clear, nudges you toward the direction your heart secretly longed for. This is not imagination, it is awakening. When your spirit begins to align with higher purpose, it becomes attuned to the frequencies most people overlook. You are being tuned like an instrument, learning to hear with your soul, not your ears. And in this tuning, something remarkable happens. The line between the seen and unseen starts to blur. You begin to realize that guidance doesn't always arrive through people or plans. Sometimes it comes through the soft choreography of events. A delay that saves you, a detour that directs you, a disappointment that hides a greater blessing. Everything starts to shimmer with meaning. Even the smallest details feel alive with divine intelligence. It's humbling to realize how intricately life has been guiding you all along. You were never walking alone. You were being led. Every coincidence, every intuition, every unanswered prayer was part of a tapestry far greater than your understanding. And now, with eyes that see and ears that hear, you begin to walk differently, not with fear, but with trust. But as you move deeper into this awareness, something paradoxical begins to unfold. Right when everything starts to make sense, life goes quiet again. Not wrong, just silent. The signs slow down, the movement halts, and you find yourself in the space between what was promised and what has not yet arrived. It feels like waiting, but it's not just waiting, it's transformation disguised as delay. This space, this waiting, tests the strength of your faith. Because when everything stops moving, your mind begins to question. You wonder if you misheard the signs, if you imagine the alignment, if perhaps you're lost again. But what you're experiencing is not abandonment, it's gestation. You are not forgotten, you are being formed. Every blessing has a season of silence before it blooms. Just as a seed disappears beneath soil, long before it breaks into light, so too must your dreams go underground before they rise into form. The waiting is where they grow roots, unseen, uncelebrated, but absolutely essential. It is in this hidden season that your faith learns to breathe without evidence. This waiting is sacred because it teaches patience not as punishment, but as protection. It teaches you to trust what you cannot see, to rest in divine timing rather than force your own. You begin to understand that what is meant for you cannot be rushed. It arrives when your character is ready, not when your craving is strongest. The delay refines you. It stretches your endurance, deepens your humility, and strengthens your capacity to receive. And so you wait, not passively, but purposefully. You stop begging for signs and start cultivating stillness. You stop demanding clarity and begin embracing mystery. Slowly, your definition of faith transforms. Faith is no longer the belief that everything will happen the way you want. It becomes the quiet trust that everything is unfolding exactly as it should. Then one day, in the middle of that waiting, discomfort comes. Not the discomfort of longing, but the discomfort of growth. The familiar starts to resist you again. The things that once fit begin to feel too tight. People question your silence, your choices, your calm. You feel misunderstood. And yet somewhere deep inside, you know this too is necessary. Because every blessing demands release. And release is never comfortable. Life will often lead you through resistance before revelation. The path to expansion always begins with tension. It's the stretching of your spirit, the breaking of old patterns, the friction between who you were and who you are becoming. This discomfort, though painful, carries a hidden message. When you are being realigned, when the universe begins to remove what no longer supports your next chapter, Opportunities that once felt certain start to dissolve. Relationships shift. Plans crumble. It's easy to see this as opposition, as if the world is working against you. But the truth is simpler and softer. You are not being blocked. You are being redirected. Every closed door is protection from a lesser version of your destiny. Every rejection is redirection toward what was meant all along. You are being refined through resistance. It's as though life is sculpting you, carving away what no longer resembles truth. The process hurts, but what remains afterward is pure, unshakable, and ready. You begin to see that the discomfort was not a sign of things going wrong, but of things being made right. Growth never feels gentle, it feels like breaking open. Yet every crack is a portal through which light enters. Every tear is a cleansing, every loss a release. And the more you surrender to this flow, the clearer you see. The resistance was the bridge to your revelation. You start to thank the pauses, the delays, even the heartbreaks, because each one brought you closer to clarity. Each one stripped away illusions until only truth remained. You no longer crave speed, you crave depth. You no longer beg for answers, you seek alignment. You no longer chase certainty, you rest in faith. And something miraculous happens when you reach this stage. Your energy begins to shift again. What once frightened you now feels familiar. You start to recognize discomfort as divine communication. You stop fighting what's leaving and start blessing its departure. You begin to move through life, not with resistance, but with reverence. You realize that guidance isn't just found in the signs that appear, but also in the silence that follows. The waiting isn't empty, it's holy. And the discomfort isn't punishment, it's purification. Every moment, whether peaceful or painful, is shaping the woman you are becoming. The woman strong enough, wise enough, soft enough to hold the magnitude of her blessing. So you breathe. You stop rushing toward outcomes and start listening to the rhythm beneath it all. You learn that divine timing isn't about delay, it's about readiness. You understand that spiritual alignment isn't about seeing more signs, but about becoming the kind of person who no longer needs them to believe. And when you reach that stillness, that unwavering calm, something shifts in the unseen. What was hidden begins to reveal itself. Doors that once resisted, you open with ease. The right people appear at the perfect time. Opportunities flow toward you, not because you chased them, but because you finally became a match for them. What you once called coincidence, you now recognize as divine choreography. What you once labeled waiting, you now see as preparation. What you once experienced as discomfort, you now understand as awakening. Everything has meaning now. Even the moments that broke you carry light. And as you look back, you see how intricately the pieces fit together. How every sign, every silence, every struggle was guiding you toward this exact moment. The patterns weren't random. The pauses weren't wasted. The resistance wasn't cruel. It was all love in disguise. You realize that blessings rarely arrive in the form you expect. They come wrapped in lessons, disguised in delays, hidden in the spaces you once called empty. They arrive the moment you stop demanding and start trusting. And in that deep trust, that surrendered knowing, peace begins to overflow. Because you finally understand that you were never waiting for your blessing. Your blessing was waiting for you to see, to surrender, to become. For every pattern that led you, every pause that humbled you, every discomfort that refined you, they were never obstacles on your path. They were the path. The divine was not preparing your blessing, it was preparing anew. There comes a moment when life begins to feel unfamiliar. You start to notice that the very things that used to bring you comfort now feel heavy, almost foreign to your spirit. It is not because something is wrong, but because something greater is unfolding within you. When God is preparing to bless you with something bigger, He doesn't simply hand it to you. He transforms you until you are ready to hold it. You will feel it in your bones, in your silence, in the way your soul starts craving peace more than attention. You may find yourself losing interest in the noise that once surrounded you. The conversations that used to excite you suddenly feel empty. The places you once found yourself longing for no longer pull you in. It is as though your spirit is detoxing from what no longer aligns with your future. And this is not loneliness. This is alignment. You are being positioned. The divine is removing distractions, not to punish you, but to make space for what is coming. The things that fall away are not losses, they are lessons disguised as endings. You begin to sense that something is changing beneath the surface, something you cannot name, yet you can feel it. You wake up one morning and realize that your heart no longer desires to chase, to prove, or to beg for love that is not freely given. You no longer fight for places where your presence feels like a burden. Instead, you start choosing peace, even when it comes with silence. This is the first sign that you are stepping into a new dimension of divine preparation. You are no longer guided by impulse, but by inner knowing. And in that stillness, God begins to refine you. He begins to teach you the sacred difference between waiting and wasting time. Waiting, you see, is not inactivity. Waiting is the art of readiness. It is the soul whispering, I trust the timing. It's not about sitting still with frustration, it's about sitting still with faith. You start to understand that your current season isn't about being punished for past mistakes. It's about being positioned for future blessings. The delay is not denial, it's divine alignment in motion. There will be days when it feels like nothing is happening. Days when your prayers seem to echo back unanswered. Days when your dreams look further away than ever. But even in that quiet in-between, something sacred is growing. Like a seed buried beneath the soil, your blessings are germinating in darkness, invisible to the eye yet undeniably alive. If only you could see what's being built in the unseen, you would never question the silence again. This process, this holy unraveling, is how transformation begins. You may think you are losing everything, but you are actually shedding the version of yourself that cannot carry what's next. The relationships that end, the doors that close, the jobs that slip away. They are not your downfall, they are your pruning. And pruning never feels pleasant. It feels like pain, but it is preparation. The gardener must cut the branch that no longer bears fruit so the tree can bloom again. As you grow quieter inside, you start noticing how your discernment sharpens. You see people more clearly, not through the lens of attachment, but through awareness. You begin to understand that love is not about how much you can give to be accepted, but how deeply you can stay true to yourself without needing to be understood. You stop shrinking to fit where you've outgrown. You stop apologizing for your light just to make others comfortable in their shadows. And that shift, that subtle inner strength, is the sound of divine favor taking form. You see, before something big arrives, the universe always asks you a question. Can you be faithful with less? Because how you handle the small will determine how you handle the great. The woman who can find peace in the middle of uncertainty is the one who can hold abundance with grace. The one who remains grateful when she has little is the one who can be trusted with overflow. God will always test your patience before He reveals your promise. And so He may strip you of the things that make you feel secure, not because He wants to hurt you, but because He wants to show you where your true foundation lies. You might feel exposed, vulnerable, even scared, but this vulnerability is sacred. It is the doorway through which transformation enters. When you have nothing left to lean on but faith, you begin to understand that faith was enough all along. Then comes the humbling, the season where everything feels uncertain, where you are called to surrender control. You realize that you cannot plan your way into divine blessings. You cannot manipulate timing, force outcomes, or demand clarity. You must let go of your need to know and trust that what is meant for you will always find its way. That kind of trust doesn't come from logic. It comes from experience. It's born in those long nights of prayer when your heart feels heavy and heaven feels silent, yet you still choose to believe. That is the soil where miracles grow. The divine will always plant your blessings in the fields of your patience. And patience is not just waiting, it's waiting without bitterness. It's walking through uncertainty with a quiet confidence that something greater is unfolding beyond your sight. When you finally stop trying to control everything, you make space for grace to move. Slowly, the fog begins to lift. You start to see glimpses of light, signs that your waiting was not in vain. Opportunities appear where doors once closed. New people enter your life who carry peace, not confusion. You realize that what is meant for you doesn't require you to chase it. It recognizes you when you stand in truth. The same energy you once wasted trying to be chosen becomes the energy that attracts everything meant to find you. You are not being delayed. You are being developed. The pain you feel is not punishment. It is refinement. Like gold in the fire, you are being purified for purpose. The things that once wounded you are now the very things that give you wisdom. The moments that once broke, you are now the foundation of your strength. You look back and realize that what you thought was destruction was actually construction. Every loss was guiding you toward clarity, every disappointment toward discernment. You begin to honor the process. You stop rushing. Stop comparing, stop questioning your worth based on where others are. You finally see that your journey is sacred, uniquely designed for you. The divine doesn't need you to compete, it needs you to align. And when you do, life begins to unfold differently. You move slower but deeper. You speak less but with more truth. You love quieter but with more depth. And it is here, in this quiet, awakened state, that blessings begin to find you effortlessly. You no longer chase, you attract. You no longer fight, you flow. You no longer beg, you believe, because now you understand that what is truly yours cannot be taken, delayed, or denied. It is preserved in the divine timing that knows no error. So, if your life feels uncertain right now, if things are shifting and you don't understand why, take heart. You are not falling apart. You are falling into alignment. The things you are losing are clearing the way for what has been waiting for you all along. You are not being overlooked, you are being prepared, and preparation always comes before promotion. You are being shaped into a woman who can hold the weight of the blessing that's coming, the loneliness, the silence, the loss. They are not the end of your story. They are the making of your strength. The woman who emerges from this season will not be the same one who entered it. She will be wiser, softer, stronger, and deeply aligned with her divine purpose. This is how God blesses, not with chaos, but with clarity, not with rush, but with readiness, not with abundance you cannot sustain, but with peace that cannot be taken. The storm you're walking through is not meant to destroy you, it's meant to deliver you. So breathe, trust, stay still long enough to let the old fall away. You are not waiting for something outside of you to change. You are becoming the change itself. The blessing is not just coming to you. It is growing within you. And when it is ready, when you are ready, it will arrive quietly, beautifully, and exactly on time. There comes a point in a woman's life when she begins to sense a deeper current moving beneath the surface, subtle, yet undeniable. It's the quiet stirring of destiny calling her name, and though she cannot yet see what awaits her, she feels it, that holy discontent that whispers, there's more. Not more noise, not more success, not more validation, but more meaning, more alignment, more truth. When God is preparing to bless a woman with something big, He first awakens her spirit to a higher level of awareness, one that no longer settles for the ordinary. She begins to see through illusions. The same patterns that once enslaved her now reveal their emptiness. The relationships that once thrilled her now expose their shallowness. The desires that once drove her now feel small compared to the peace she's starting to crave. This is not boredom, it is awakening. It is her soul's recognition that she was not born to repeat cycles. She was born to rise beyond them. The divine is teaching her that to receive greater, she must outgrow lesser. And so, her spirit begins to declutter. She no longer feels the urge to chase after everything that glitters. Her energy softens, not from defeat, but from wisdom. She starts to understand that not every door must be opened. Not every fight deserves her fire. Not every invitation requires her presence. The woman who once fought for attention now fights for peace. The one who once sought validation now seeks alignment. This shift, this sacred reorientation, is one of the clearest signs that something extraordinary is on its way. But in this sacred space between endings and beginnings, she may also feel misunderstood. Her silence may be mistaken for distance, her solitude for sadness. But the truth is, she's being rewired from within. She's learning to listen to her spirit instead of her surroundings. She's realizing that growth often requires isolation, that before something new can bloom, the soil must first be cleared of weeds. What feels like loss is often divine preparation in disguise. And so, she begins to walk differently. Not faster, but deeper. She speaks less, but with more intention. She learns that every word carries energy. And every action either plants or plucks seeds. Her movements become quieter, but her impact becomes louder. This is how the divine polishes a woman, not through force, but through refinement. Every delay becomes a lesson in patience, every heartbreak a mirror for her own strength. She realizes that she was never waiting for something external to change. She was being prepared to become the version of herself that could carry the blessing already written for her. As she matures spiritually, her relationship with time begins to shift. She no longer measures her worth by how quickly things happen. She understands that the pace of divine timing has nothing to do with the ticking of the clock and everything to do with readiness of the heart. What is meant for her will not rush her, nor will it pass her by. It will meet her at the intersection of patience and purpose. This is why the divine sometimes slows her down, not to punish her, but to prevent her from entering spaces her soul has outgrown. The slowing is not stagnation, it is preparation. Like the seed that must rest in the darkness of the soil before it blooms in light, her season of stillness is not a pause, it's a process. It's here, in the unseen, that her roots are deepening, preparing to anchor her when her blessings finally rise into view. And as those roots grow, she begins to shed her fears. The fear of missing out, the fear of not being enough, the fear of starting over. These old voices no longer hold her hostage, because she's learning to listen to a deeper voice, the one that whispers, "Once you are safe, you are guided, you are exactly where you need to be." She starts to trust her intuition, not as a fleeting feeling, but as divine intelligence. Every time she honors that quiet nudge within, she moves closer to the future meant for her. Then something profound begins to happen. Her energy starts to shift. People notice it before she does. There's a lightness in her step, a calmness in her eyes, a depth in her presence that cannot be explained. It's not that her life has suddenly become perfect. It's that she's learned to rest in imperfection without losing peace. She has discovered the secret. The storm outside cannot touch the stillness within, and that stillness, that unwavering peace, becomes her power. The woman she once was could be shaken by delay, by rejection, by uncertainty. But the woman she's becoming has learned to stand still in the middle of change. She knows that divine timing does not respond to panic, it responds to faith. She's learning that patience is not passive, it's powerful. It's the quiet confidence that says, "I may not see it yet, but it's already done." And it is through this quiet surrender that her blessings begin to find her. You see, before a great blessing comes, the divine will always check your heart posture. Can you hold peace when you don't have clarity? Can you remain kind when you feel unseen? Can you still serve when no one is watching? These are the invisible tests that precede visible blessings. The woman who passes them doesn't just receive abundance, she becomes abundance. She no longer begs for love, she radiates it. She no longer chases purpose, she embodies it. She doesn't try to control outcomes, she flows with grace, trusting that what is meant for her cannot be missed. And this is where divine favor begins to flow, not in the loud, dramatic moments, but in the quiet, consistent ones. The moment she chooses peace over pride, love over fear, faith over frustration, something in the unseen begins to shift. The path ahead starts to clear. The people she needs begin to appear. The opportunities that once seemed impossible start aligning effortlessly. This is not coincidence, it is the rhythm of divine orchestration. The beauty of this process is that she doesn't need to force anything anymore. She understands that the same God who created the ocean doesn't need her to push the waves. He just needs her to trust the tide. She realizes that control is an illusion and surrender is freedom. The moment she stops fighting life, life starts flowing toward her. That is the paradox of power. The less she grasps, the more she receives. Then comes the moment of recognition. When she looks back and realizes how far she's come, the tears that once felt wasted were watering the garden of her resilience. The silence that once felt empty was echoing with divine instruction. The pain that once broke her was breaking her open to new understanding. She sees that everything was necessary. Even the heartbreaks, even the delays, even the detours, nothing was wasted. Every step was shaping her into the woman who could now stand in this peace. She begins to walk with a different kind of confidence. Not the loud, external kind that demands to be seen, but the quiet inner kind that doesn't need to prove anything. Her confidence is not built on perfection, but on presence. She knows who she is, and more importantly, she knows who she is. That knowing anchors her. It makes her immovable in storms and humble in success. When she reaches this level of awareness, she no longer fears the unknown. She embraces it because she knows that the unknown is simply the space where miracles are born. She trusts that the same hand that closed one door is already preparing another. And so, she no longer resists change, she dances with it. The unknown becomes her teacher, not her enemy. Through this sacred evolution, she becomes the living proof that peace is not found in the absence of challenges, but in the presence of trust. Her life begins to radiate differently. Not because everything is perfect, but because she has learned to find beauty even in imperfection. The chaos around her doesn't define her calm. The noise outside doesn't disturb her clarity. She has mastered the art of stillness. And in that stillness, her blessings are drawn to her like light to a flame. And this is the mystery of divine preparation. That before the blessing shows up in her hands, it first takes root in her heart. Before the opportunity appears in her path, it first awakens in her spirit. She realizes that she was never waiting for something to come. She was becoming the vessel that could hold it. Her transformation was not just preparation, it was prophecy. So, if you find yourself in that quiet, uncertain space where nothing seems to be moving, don't lose heart. You are not being forgotten, you are being formed. The very silence you fear is the sacred ground where your next chapter is being written. You are being strengthened for the weight of what's coming. The woman you are becoming will not just receive blessings, she will sustain them. And when that time comes, when the doors open and the paths clear and the blessings arrive, she will not be surprised. Because deep down, she already knew. Her spirit recognized it long before her eyes could see it. She'll smile softly, not out of shock but out of remembrance, because she will realize that the woman she prayed to become is finally the woman she has become. That is the beauty of divine timing. It never rushes, it never fails. It unfolds exactly when your spirit is strong enough to carry what your heart has been asking for all along. And in that sacred alignment, you will understand. The blessing was never just the thing you were waiting for. The blessing was who you became while waiting. There comes a season when a woman begins to sense that her life is no longer about waiting for something to happen, but about becoming something she has never been before. She no longer seeks external signs of her worth. She begins to embody worth itself. The woman she was is slowly dissolving, and the woman she is becoming is emerging with quiet strength. It's a transformation that doesn't announce itself loudly. It whispers through small shifts. The way she speaks to herself, the way she protects her peace, the way she no longer settles for energy that drains her light. You see, when the divine prepares a woman for something greater, the first blessing is not what she receives, it's what she begins to release. The hands that once clung to what was now open in surrender. She understands that to hold something new, she must let go of what was never meant to stay. This is one of the most powerful stages of spiritual evolution. The moment when she stops asking, said, "Why did I lose that?" and starts whispering, "Thank you for removing what was blocking my growth." That shift, that quiet, sacred acceptance is where true transformation begins. She realizes that every ending carries within it the seed of a beginning. The tears that once fell in confusion are not signs of weakness, they are evidence of cleansing. Every heartbreak, every delay, every disappointment was clearing the debris of old attachments, making room for the life that truly belongs to her. There is something deeply holy about this stage, because it is where she stops negotiating with her past and starts conversing with her destiny. As she grows deeper into awareness, she notices that life begins to test her in subtle ways. It's not the loud storms anymore, it's the quiet choices. Will she respond from fear, or will she respond from faith? Will she go back to what's familiar, or will she trust the unknown? The divine doesn't test her to break her. It tests her to reveal her readiness. Every time she chooses alignment over attachment, she signals to heaven that she is ready for more. And this is how her energy changes. She no longer moves from desperation, but from discernment. She doesn't chase anymore. She attracts. Her presence begins to carry an unspoken authority, a calm strength that doesn't need to prove itself. The people around her may not understand what's happening, but they can feel it. Something in her energy has shifted. She's rooted now. She's anchored not in circumstance, but in clarity. She's no longer defined by what left, but by what remains. There's something breathtaking about a woman who no longer fears solitude, because when she is at peace in her own company, she becomes magnetic. Her solitude becomes sacred, a sanctuary where she meets the divine in stillness. She starts to realize that her alone time is not emptiness, it's replenishment. It's the space where her intuition sharpens, her creativity awakens, and her heart refines its desires. Solitude teaches her the difference between loneliness and alignment. Loneliness comes from missing others. Alignment comes from meeting herself. This inner meeting, this reunion with the self, is what opens the door to divine clarity. She starts to receive visions, ideas, and insights that seem to come out of nowhere. But they're not random. They're revelations. The universe begins to speak to her through synchronicities, numbers, dreams, sudden urges to change direction. Every sign whispers, "You are not lost, you are being guided." She begins to trust that guidance more than she trusts the noise of logic. And soon, she learns one of the greatest truths, that faith is not believing everything will go her way, but believing that even if it doesn't, she will still be okay. That realization liberates her. It removes the weight of control and replaces it with the peace of surrender. She stops wrestling with life and starts flowing with it. Like water, she adapts. Like wind, she moves freely. Like earth, she holds steady. Then, almost mysteriously, she starts to notice the beauty in places she once overlooked. The same sunrise she used to rush past now feels like a gift. The same body she once criticized becomes a temple she honors. The same silence that once scared her now feels like home. She realizes that gratitude is not a reaction to blessings. It's the soil that grows them. When she begins to live from a heart of gratitude, everything around her starts to bloom differently. And as she blooms, she begins to attract people who match her new frequency, souls who value her peace, honor her presence, and speak her language of truth, the connections that enter her life now. Don't drain her, they water her. she no longer entertains half-hearted love or temporary attention. She understands that her energy is sacred, and anything that costs her peace is too expensive. This awareness becomes her boundary, and her boundary becomes her protection. What she once thought was rejection now reveals itself as redirection. The people who left were never meant to stay for this chapter. They were part of her evolution, not her destination. And now, as she stands at the threshold of a new beginning, she realizes that the greatest blessing is not the new door opening. It's the woman she's become while waiting for it. She has learned to live without forcing, without pleading, without shrinking. She has learned to breathe through uncertainty and smile through the silence. That's divine maturity, the kind that cannot be taught, only lived. This maturity gives birth to purpose. She begins to feel called, not by ambition, but by alignment. The things she once did for recognition, she now does from reverence. She wants her life to mean something, not just look like something. Her definition of success shifts. It's no longer about what she accumulates, but about what she contributes. She starts to realize that her presence itself is a ministry. Her peace is her message. Her resilience is her sermon. Her life is her living prayer. And in this awareness, something sacred happens. She stops waiting for miracles and realizes she is one, the very breath in her lungs, the very courage to keep going when it would have been easier to quit. That is a miracle. Her journey is not about arriving at a destination. It's about evolving into deeper expressions of grace. Every experience, every wound, every victory was molding her into someone who could carry the magnitude of her purpose. As she begins to live from that place of purpose, she no longer worries about how things will unfold. Her trust becomes effortless. She walks as though she already knows the outcome. Because she understands now that divine timing is never early, never late, always exact. And so she doesn't rush her process, she reveres it. She honors the pauses as much as the progress. She moves slowly, intentionally, because she knows that what's meant for her has her name written in eternity. It cannot be missed. And so she lets go again and again, not because she's weak, but because she's wise enough to know that holding on to what's expired blocks what's divine. She lets go of needing closure from others. She lets go of proving herself. She lets go of trying to be understood by those committed to misunderstanding her. She realizes that closure is not something given. It's something created. It happens when you stop waiting for someone to apologize and start thanking them for teaching you. Her spirit becomes lighter, her energy becomes clearer. She walks through life now with an aura of grace that comes from deep surrender. When people look at her, they see peace. But what they don't see is the fire she walked through to earn it. That peace wasn't handed to her, it was forged in heartbreak, in silence, in waiting, in letting go. It's a peace that knows pain intimately, yet chooses to love anyway. It's a peace that doesn't depend on circumstances, it radiates from within. She becomes the embodiment of divine balance, fierce and gentle, strong and soft, grounded yet limitless. She no longer runs from her sensitivity, she honors it, because she understands that her sensitivity is not weakness. It's sacred intuition. It's the part of her that feels deeply enough to heal others. She no longer apologizes for her depth. She wears it like a crown. And as she stands here, in this moment of calm awareness, she realizes that the blessing she was preparing for is not something that's coming from outside. It's unfolding within her. The expansion, the peace, the power, the grace. These are not rewards for endurance, they are reflections of evolution. She has become a woman of depth, of discernment, of divine poise. So when that great blessing finally arrives, and it will, she won't be overwhelmed. She will be ready. She will hold it with grace, not fear. She will nurture it with wisdom, not insecurity, because she'll know this truth. The blessing didn't make her whole. She was already whole. The blessing just met her at her wholeness. And from that moment on, everything she touches will flourish, not because of luck, but because she carries the frequency of alignment. Her presence will calm storms, her words will heal hearts, her faith will open doors. She will walk as living proof that when a woman aligns with divine timing, nothing can stop what's destined to be hers, for she has learned the most powerful truth of all, that the blessing was never the thing she prayed for. It was always the woman she became along the way. And so, when all is said and done, it becomes clear that the greatest blessings are never rushed, never loud, and never arrive when we think we are ready. They come when we have finally quieted the noise of what we want, so we can hear what our soul has been whispering all along. Blessings do not descend like lightning. They unfold like dawn, slowly, gently, with patience and purpose. They meet us not in the perfection of our plans, but in the surrender of our hearts. Every heartbreak, every silence, every season of being misunderstood was not punishment. It was preparation. It was life itself, shaping you into the vessel that could finally hold what you once prayed for. Perhaps that's the beauty of divine timing. It waits for no calendar, yet it never arrives late. It waits for alignment. It waits for truth. It waits for the day when your heart stops chasing what looks right and starts attracting what feels right. And maybe this is what it truly means to be blessed. Not to receive everything you once begged for, but to become someone who no longer needs to beg. To awaken one morning and realize you no longer need to be chosen, because you finally chose yourself. You see, blessings rarely look like gifts in the beginning. Sometimes they look like endings, silence, isolation, even rejection. But when your heart learns to stay soft through it all, when your faith remains steady, even when the path is unseen, that's when something sacred begins to move through you. You become a vessel of grace, a woman no longer chasing miracles, because she is one. And in that stillness, that quiet surrender, everything begins to shift. You start noticing how what's meant for you no longer runs away. You start recognizing peace in places that once made you anxious. You begin to attract people who mirror your healing, not your wounds. This is where divine favor meets you, not in striving, but in resting, not in proving, but in being. And when you finally understand that, you'll realize that God was never withholding anything from you. He was only waiting until you became ready to receive it without losing yourself. So if your life feels heavy right now, if the waiting feels endless, if the silence feels unbearable, remember this: even the seed feels buried before it blooms. You are not being buried, you are being planted. And when it is time, when your roots are deep enough, when your faith is strong enough, when your heart has learned enough, you will rise quietly, gracefully, powerfully, because the blessing was never just what you were waiting for. The blessing was what you were coming while you waited.